Hey, everybody.
Welcome to High Five Live this morning.
Great to have you here, and we would love it if you would let us know where you are from in the comments. We're the Andersons, and this is the Gathering series.
And today we're talking about our favorite love story.
Yes, we are.
Why would we pick such a topic as that? Well, it just so happens that yesterday was our 49th anniversary.
Ah!
Somehow she deserves a Purple Heart for surviving all that time.
You do.
Amazing. So we're excited to share this wonderful story with you.
We love family stories, and the benefits of telling family stories and creating a family narrative are immense. In fact, it was a surprising theme that emerged from a study at Emory University. And they studied families, and they figured out in the end that the single most important thing that you can do for your family is maybe the simplest of all, to have that narrative. Family stories going on daily as you go about your tasks, as you live your life, to share the stories from the past and develop that strong narrative. So dinner time, bedtime, anytime.
Driving in the car time.
Yeah, family home meeting. Come follow me. These stories, these love stories, these stories of adventure. In fact, my mom's dad was an adventurous soul.
Yes, I would say that's a nice way to put it.
Yeah. There were 9 boys in the family, and when they were growing up, sometimes the parents could not figure out who it was that caused the trouble. So they'd line them all up and give them all a whipping. And my grandpa would always want to be first. And the reason was he wanted to laugh at all the rest of them. And there was a beautiful love story that started out really wonderfully with my grandma. But then Grandpa Max stepped out, wasn't true to her, and they had to get divorced. And later on, I mean, he left a trail of tears.
7 marriages.
Yeah, 7 marriages. But in the end, in his 70s, he repented, came back, went through the temple, got married in the temple. And this actually provided an amazing opportunity for all of us, especially my mom, to forgive. And these stories of forgiveness can teach us so much.
And patience.
Patience, yeah.
Her other parents, grandparents, left on a mission at the same time, and they were going to Hawaii, and they were even on the boat at the same time, which was a long trip.
And she got really sick, and he took care of her,
and it was so sweet.
He served on his mission for 5 years.
She came home after 2, and then waited for all the rest of that time for him to get home. So that was an interesting
love story.
But today, we'd like to share something about our story. And excited to tell you a little about it for a very important reason. You see, it started at church, right?
Well, you know what? I'm going to say 2 things, and then I'm going to give you the screen, okay? One is, just to finish the study that was done, that these professors asked children how much they knew about their family stories. And they asked them things like, do you know where your parents went to school? Were there illnesses? Were there deaths? What were their friends like? Do you know the story of your own birth? So they asked them all these questions, and that's how they came up with the data that said, these stories make a difference. Knowing these stories and what happened to your family members can give you a new lease on life. It can help you. And as children growing up, they can help them be resilient and put out,
handle stress more easily, be more emotionally stable,
communicate better, and face challenges better. So we tell our family story and our love story over and over again. In fact, our children know it so well. Yeah, they tell it better again. So you'll hear my side someday, maybe, but I'm just going to let my husband have the screen and tell our story his way.
Thank you. So I was at church, a great place to be. Here I am at church, and suddenly a young man came in. He was new. I happened to be by the door, so I welcomed him and helped him kind of get to know everyone. Later on that day, at another meeting, I was sitting next to him because we were asked to pass the sacrament that day. And suddenly the door opened, and in came this beautiful woman. And I was gazing at her as she walked up the aisle, and I turned to him and I said, she is so beautiful. And he said, who's that? I said, can't you see? Take off your blinders. And he said, you mean my sister? I said, hey, friend, we're friends, pals. Who's your best friend, right? You go introduce me to your family. And he told me a little about the family and knew that they loved to sing. I thought, I've got to find a way to get to know her without showing I'm interested, because, college men know you've got to be a little cool about this. So I found out they learned how to sing, and I checked with the music director and asked if we could put together a double quartet and sing in church the next week. She agreed, and it was all set. But then I had to get together the double quartet, and I didn't want any competition. So I asked my friend, who was going very steadily with the girl at the time, I asked her brother to be in the double quartet, and I was going to be in it, but I found a 12-year-old kid in the ward who could sing. And there we got together and we practiced and practiced. I told him, if we're going to practice, we need to practice regularly. So we got together consistently. Finally, after a while, I said, you guys are doing really well. We just need the bass section and the soprano section to get together. Anyway, over the week, we got to know each other a little. It was fun. We're standing up in church the next week singing There Is a Green Hill Far Away. It was the third verse. My friend Brent, with his beautiful Irish tenor voice, was singing that verse. I looked over at her. She had tears in her eyes. And I thought we have a lot more in common, and I thought I can't get through that song myself. And I wanted to get to know her better. But I was away at college, and in the midst of that, we had a big activity at home, but I didn't think I could go. But my class got canceled, and I hurried home, and I was there just a few hours before the activity. And I thought, well, she's new. Maybe she doesn't have a date. So I called her and said, you want to go? And she said, oh, I already have a date. But it'd be so much fun to go with you. And somehow she told me no and made me feel good about it. I think it's part of the personal progress program or something. But somehow I didn't want to go alone. And I called around and found somebody to go with me. And I called some of my friends and said, hey, let's double. And I finally had one of them said, great, I'd love to. And I picked him up and said, who are you taking? And he said, you know that cute new girl in the ward? I said, yeah, I do. So we pulled up in front of her house, and our first date together, she was in the back seat with him. Now, she had told me he hadn't dated much before, so I thought it was my obligation to help him get ready. So I walked him in and I said, we double date for a couple of reasons. Number one, you put her in on my side. Number two, you don't sit by her. Stay far away. Number three, when we get down to the dance, we trade off every other dance, because that's why you double date. To each of those, he said, great. And of course, when she was sitting on my side, I could adjust the mirror, and we got her all night. So that was helpful. But I knew after that I needed to ask her further ahead. So I remember calling her and asking for a date. But then by the time I got there, I was out of money. I've been buying my college books. I didn't have any money. I had $2.40 in my pocket. I picked her up and handed her the money, and I said, we're going to the grocery store. We're going to buy picnic supplies, and I'm going to see how well you manage money. And I handed her the $2.40. In the grocery store we went. And it was hilarious watching her try to talk the grocer into cutting open a pack of hot dogs and giving us two. We got the supplies, we left, we went out, it was cold, we didn't have any place to cook these hot dogs, we're driving around, we went down State Street, we came to the Prudential Federal Building, eternal flame burning in the parking lot. We got out and cooked our hot dogs in the middle of a parking lot. And it was a crazy date and it was fun, but on the way home I felt kind of bad. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't spend more money, but I've been buying my books and it's kind of hard. And she said, don't worry, I have a book in which I've recorded every penny I've ever spent since I was just a young girl. I have that book right here to show you. Every little penny she ever spent. I love this book. I keep it right by my bed, my desk at the house. Somehow I thought, wow, she knows how to manage money, and I want to be a teacher. That's a great aspect. And we dated, and we had fun, and it was a great fall, and lots of fun dates, just on and on. But I really hadn't talked about how I felt. I was frightened. My parents were filing for divorce. Things were kind of tough at home. I was kind of fearful about relationships. And so one day she said, I just want to know about people's first impression. What are yours? And I said, I believe in judge not that you be not judged. And so we didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about us. And finally, sometime later, we had a good conversation one night and said, we need to find out how we feel. Talked to her parents a little and great, and we were going to go pray about it. So she went home to pray. I went home to pray. I prayed earnestly, sincerely, nothing. Finally, I collapsed asleep, bed, got up the next morning, went by her house. Beautiful letter she had left. It wasn't a commitment letter, but it was a letter that said the positive aspects of our relationship. It was great. Went home and shared it with my mom, and my mom said, you better find out how you feel about her. And I said, I want to find out how I feel. Well, you better find out. I said, I would like to. Anyway, I knew I had to. I went down to my room. I knelt down. I closed the door. I poured out my heart to my Heavenly Father. I read the letter, I read my patriarchal blessing, I talked to him about everything. I talked about my hopes and my dreams. I got nothing. Not a yes, not a no, not an anything, not a maybe, not a little hint. And finally, after hours, just collapsed again, asleep on my knees. And I woke up, I walked out in the hall. And one of those times when pure intelligence flows into your soul, clearly it wasn't my thought. Turn to the scriptures. Look at Doctrine and Covenants 9:7-9. So I did. And it said, you have thought no more than to ask. You need to study this out in your mind. It's not whether the answer is yes or no. You are not ready for the answer. I was so grateful for that, but I did feel like we should study it out, that we ought to go seriously together. So I thought, great, I can go ask her that we can maybe date exclusively. I ran out to get in my car and there was so much snow. I couldn't get there, so I jumped in my boots and I hiked all the way to her house. On the way, for some reason in my mind came the thought of Nephi going back to Ishmael and saying, Ishmael, we want to take your daughters on a date. Where are you going? In the wilderness. When are you coming back? Never. That's a hard sell, but it said he won favor in the sight of Ishmael first. I knew I needed to do that, so I shoveled the sidewalk, shoveled the driveway, shoveled everything, got it all ready, and her mom came out and said, you're such a nice young man. But win favor in her sight. Yes, this is good. I went in and talked to her about my feelings and asked if we could date exclusively, and she said yes. I called her dad, and she said yes. I waited in the front room, and she came home, and I said, I've been praying. And she said, you haven't? I said, I got an answer. She said, you did? And I said, yes. She said, well, what was it? I said, I think we had a date exclusively with each other. What do you think? She said, yes, I would love to. And I said, and I ran out and made angels in the snow, and it was great. And I went home, and I realized I hadn't talked to my dad. I told my dad, and I went down to see him. And that's kind of an interesting guy. He was my bishop at the time, but he also had told me when I was young, if he hadn't kissed a girl by the third date, he thought it was a failure. And I realized we'd been dating for 3 or 4 months, and I hadn't kissed her yet. I didn't want my dad to find out. And suddenly he asked me if I kissed her, and I said no. And he said, it's not going to kill you. And he had his assistant come in and talk to me about the germs aren't going to kill me. And all I can say about that is that next weekend I found out following your bishop's advice brings great happiness. That's all about that. But then we started to date seriously. We started to attend kids. We started to do regular things. We started to paint furniture for hours one night. Well, in fact, it was hours all day. We were exhausted. We were tired. We got to the end of the painting, and I was painting the last corner, and she just poked her head around to say hello, and my paintbrush hit her right in the face. The paint was dripping off her face. I thought, I'm going to find out what she's like now. And she stood up and said, I guess I don't need any makeup tonight, do I? And I thought, oh, she's awesome. And then she dipped her paintbrush in and whap, whap. I was covered with paint. We had this great paint fight. Anyway, it was great. All that spring, we dated together, but we also spent time together facing normal things, doing dishes, facing challenges together. In the midst of all that, I felt like I had found out so much about her that I had made a decision about what I wanted. And then I went quietly to my favorite place up in the mountains behind the waterfall. And I knelt down to pray. It wasn't hours this time, it was minutes. In the midst of my prayer, I suddenly had this fear engulf me that said, you're not enough for her. You come from a broken home. How are you ever going to bring her happiness? If you really love her, you just gotta let her go. Find somebody that's really happy. I really thought, Heavenly Father, if I just pray that you'll find something to make her happy, I will back out because I love her and I want her to be happy. In the midst of one of the fearful, we had done everything we could to prepare, but I was afraid. In the midst of all of that, I received an answer. It was clear, voice to my heart said, do you believe in the atonement of Christ? And of course I do. Do you know it works in relationships? I said, I've never thought about that before. Then, clear words, trust me, not you. And had the courage to go, pick her up, take her later to Temple Square. There we were, and I was kneeling there with a ring in my hand. Her eyes were closed. It was raining softly. The temple was behind me, but I'm on my knees, ring, temple. I thought she'd get the general idea in case I couldn't talk. She finally opened her eyes, and I said, would you make our relationship forever? She said, yes. And so I followed my bishop's advice right in the middle of Temple Square. It was raining, no one was there, and I gave her a big hug and a kiss and held her tight. And we turned toward the Old South Visitor Center, and there they were, hundreds of people applauding and cheering. And We had quite an audience. Somehow, in the midst of this precious love story that has now gone on for 49 years, I am so grateful that the message I want my children to feel, no matter what else, is trust in the Lord. No matter what we do, we can't control the fact that other people have agency. We can't control the fact that we might be going through a divorce, we might have illness, we might have struggles with death, other challenges and difficulties in life. But the thing this precious story tells is the greatest love. It's His love. And our hope is that all our family narratives will help them draw closer to Him, somehow feel that love from Him. So He will never let go. He will never, never, no matter what situation you're in, no matter what challenge you're facing, our hope for you and for our family and so many others is that you will know that He will never let go of you. And you might trust in Him. That is the real story of love. And we'll leave it today in the name of Jesus Christ.